So this session will be all about customer story. And because of this customer situation, we are introducing the new solution during this 2017 years. So I will talk about the customers project and the trend and connect to the upcoming F5 newly introduced solution for you. So let me start with this one. What we are seeing in the customer's environment. Michael already talked about a lot of the cloud trend, and my colleague Prakash also talked about our vision in the cloud. Actually, so many things is happening in the market that many of the research firms like IDC, Gartner, Forrester, all of these companies are talking about this digital transformation. They're using their own terminology, but the core thing is the same. All the business is now moving to digital. And I brought some examples just to set the stage what story I will be talking about, right? So, this is 3 examples, mainly from my country, Japan, and some of the Asian countries as well. Let me start from the one on the left, Uniqlo. I confirmed there's some Uniqlo stores in Jakarta as well. In this interview, back in December 2016, there was an interview with Nikkei, which is one of the most biggest economic media in Japan, with the CEO of Uniqlo, CEO and the founder. He's recognized as one of the most successful CEO in Japan. He said, our new competitor will soon be Google. And the context is very simple. They're focusing more revenue engine in the online shop of Uniqlo.com. And nowadays, more than 20% of the revenue of Uniqlo is coming from online. What they're trying to do is to collect the data of the purchase trend, what kind of the size, what kind of the color, what kind of design is mostly purchased, and feedback that into the manufacturing and prioritize what kind of clothes they will be produced and introduced in the future. And this clever CEO clearly told us in the market that this is the category of Google business. This is why they start seeing Google as the cautious competitor of themselves. They're the fashion industry player, but the Google is now recognized as a competitor, right? Second example in the middle is the Starbucks. I hope you guys are familiar with the Starbucks application in Indonesia as well. They have application for iPhone and Android. What they are doing is they're promoting more purchase through this app. They can use a Starbucks card registered in this app. Only with iPhone, you can purchase Starbucks coffee nowadays. Starbucks want to do this more and more because they can also collect the trend of the data. What kind of size, what kind of coffee is in the popular interest among the customers. And as a result of that one, they sometimes provide free drink ticket if you purchase more coffee through the application. This is also one of the successful examples of digital business. And the last one, but not least, is my personal experience that I faced last year, December in 2016. This is a screenshot of my iPhone. On one day, December 2016, I was trying to upgrade some of my existing iPhone applications. But then what I have realized when I opened the App Store of Apple, what I faced is this. It's not working. And I was so frustrated. And then I found the reason why it was not working. Here is the reason. You can slightly see this. Apparently, it was a day of Super Mario Run release. So many people around the world start downloading the application. As a result, App Store was hang out. And I was not able to update my application. And indeed, that was the moment that I was quickly wanting to do some email with my colleague. But this Super Mario Run, the great application, but it completely disturbed my business. So these are the 3 key examples that I wanted to share with you, how the applications are influencing our private life and even in the business as well. And this is a micro point of view, but there's also the macro point of view that I have found in one of the recent article. I think it was on last month, July, from the computerweekly.com in the United States. According to Gartner's research, more and more investment is happening for the enterprise software purchase and investment just because of more consumption of the cloud and more the digitalization of the application that has been used. So these are also happening everywhere in the world, and more investment is happening. And I hope that is one of the reasons why you guys are here today to listen to the emerging trend of this space. And also, again, in the morning, our dear partner, IDC, from IDC, Michael talked about his perspective, IDC's perspective about the cloud adoption. Indeed, F5 also did the research last year, second half of last year, about the cloud trend. The difference between IDC and this F5 research is IDC talks to a lot of CIO, a lot of enterprise, right? On the other hand, F5 talked to our customer, the customer who consume and use F5 technology on a daily basis, which is you guys. It's a smaller group, but it's more relevant to think what is happening in the customer of F5's world. And the interesting findings here is that the first question was around what is the priority of the investment for the next 2 to 5 years in the cloud space. Slightly, private cloud was more than public cloud. The same deal for the investment question as well. And just in case you are interested in the full report, there's a lot of questions, like 50 questions around this. And in the worldwide, 2,200 respondents from F5 customer actually provided the feedback. And the entire full report is downloadable from this link. You can get my presentation after the event, so go to this link and you can download all the entire report. But the key takeaway here is that private cloud is a little bit slightly more interested among the F5 customers, but also the public cloud as well. Another findings. There was another question in the same report of F5. This is the question about how many applications, what kind of percentage of your business application is now stored in the cloud. If you simply read this result, the highest bar goes to 1 to 24%. So quarter of the application is in the cloud, and the rest of the application is still in the data center. This was a result. However, I wanted to emphasize something different here, because in other words, if you summarize all of these 3 bars here, which means more than half, more than 50% of the application already is in the cloud, 20% of the respondents says that. 20% of the respondents says more than 50% of my applications are already on the cloud. This is actually more than we were assuming. So the cloud shift is happening for F5 customer as well. This is the key takeaway. However, I think we have the same feeling here, because I was talking about a lot of stats from the global findings, but I am here in Jakarta city in Indonesia. It's all about global data, right? So why don't we try to do something similar specifically for Indonesian customer, which is all of you. So this is very experimental approach, but we have prepared today's event's feedback form. You will get this quite soon after this break time. And in this feedback form, there is just 3 questions that will ask about your cloud journey status. Please kindly respond to this and submit to the event manager so that we will be able to collect the data among all of you guys in this room where you are in terms of the cloud journey. And we will send the result to you after the event, after analyzing the result, and I will provide some of the insight and commentary. What is the summary of the result? By doing this, we will, in addition to the global data, we can share all of our status. Obviously, I'm not going to disclose any company name, so don't worry about it. I'm not intent to share the information of the company, but just to share the trend where we are, where F5 community is. This is a purpose, right? And of course, that can be also used for your event report. I guess everybody in this room here is here for business, right? Is there anybody who is here for their hobby? I don't think so, right? If you're here for business, you have to report and summarize your key takeaway from this event. Please use this survey result for that one, because this is the one that will be generated from this room, the community of F5. Okay? All right, so let me introduce with these stats and current situational analytics, moving on to the emerging trend that F5 is seeing. In a nutshell, there's 3 trends I have chose this time. The first one is containerization. Second is obviously the cloud. And last but not least is IoT, Internet of Things. Let me start from the containerization. How many of you are familiar with this logo? Do you recognize? Oh, thank you. I know there's a Bluebird taxi apps here, but also globally this logo, this app is very famous. It is an Uber application. And I will use this as an example to introduce what the microservices are, because it is one of the most famous projects that has deployed microservices architecture in the containerized environment. So here is the very simple comparison between traditional architecture on the left-hand side versus the new microservices architecture on the right-hand side. Imagine about the way you use Uber apps. When you're using Uber apps, what kind of functionality do you have? Like, first, finding the taxi, check the taxi driver status, check the route from the place you want to get in and get out, check the price, set the payment methodology, and of course, you have to register about your own user information, right? Traditionally, all of these specific functionalities in these Uber apps was existing in the same software instance, same software image, probably you can say. On the other hand, in the microservices architecture, per each functions, software will be separated. Each function will have independent software image, but they still function exactly the same in the traditional way through the APIs, which means although they have a lot of software image inside, they're talking to each other through APIs all the time. This is a microservices. And the only reason why they wanted to do this is because they are getting more pressure to have frequent software function upgrade than before. If you think about some of the traditional example of enterprise software, I just had a discussion with a customer in Japan who told me that they have very business critical financial application that a financial team is using. They are not allowed to make the outage and upgrade the software more than 3 times per year. They can only upgrade their software only 3 times a year, right? On the other hand, if you think about your, let's say, Facebook application, don't you receive the newer version of the Facebook application every Friday morning? Which means, in this emerging trend, application upgrade is happening on weekly or daily basis. Why? Because the business environment is different. They have a lot of competitors. They have Snapchat, they have Instagram, they have a lot of Chinese applications as well. So they have to make sure that their application is up to date, accommodating the new functionality as soon as possible so that they can win the game with the competitors. So because of these business environment changes, the software upgrade frequency is higher than ever. And in order to do that, this architecture will be beneficial. Because let's say, for instance, Uber wants to add new payment methodology, like Alipay or PayPal or something. In the traditional architecture, when they do the new function to be implemented, they have to test everything, involving all functions. But if they can separate the function, the testing will not influence that much. They can just test inside a single instance of the microservices. So it will be much easier and faster to do the frequent upgrade of the software. This is the biggest engine of considering microservices. Sounds like it's a beautiful, great world, isn't it? However, it's not only the beautiful story. There's a challenge as well. Here's a challenge. As I mentioned, in the microservices architecture, there's millions of small instances exist in the same software. They're talking to each other all the time. What will happen if they have any issue or bugs or network outage? They have to find out what is the issue. They have to fix the issue. But compared to the traditional architecture, they're talking to each other all the time. So they have to check all the API chat logs all the way. That is crazy effort. So this new architecture is generating the new problem for the operators. They have to do the more complex troubleshooting and identify the reason of the issue and fix it. This customer that I talked to told me that the API check and all those troubleshooting is like crazy. They're not going to do it anymore. So how can we address this issue? Here is the story from F5. The way, actually, Uber is not our customer for this specific reason, but just let me use the Uber as an example. What we have been doing for the longest time is to support the software that exists in the server, and customer kindly deploy F5's solution in front of the server, and we provide agile and high availability and security and all of those solutions. Exactly in the same manner, in the microservices containerized environment, what we will be providing is the new solution that will exist per each containers and provide exact same solution for each containers. And most importantly, we will provide the visibility of all of those application traffic between the containers. By doing this, customer will get more beneficial and visibility of the application traffic for the containerized environment. And a little bit more detailed diagram is here. I'm not going to go into the details because I just heard that all the engineering people just went to the lab session. So I believe everybody in this room is more business-centric people. So I'm not going to talk about the details, but we have introduced new two solutions here that will basically take care of this east-west traffic, which means the traffic between container and container. And also the other solution, which is container connector, will basically connect all of these application traffic information to the external management orchestration systems. By doing this, we will allow the customer to fully understand what is happening in the container environment behind traditional F5 solutions, and customer will get the benefit as a visibility and the control to the application traffic in the container environment. All right, the second topic, the cloud. Well, actually, everyone talk about the cloud so much. So let me quickly jump into some of the specific story about the cloud. We are seeing, as you see in my first page, the private cloud project is happening everywhere in the world. But there's numerous reasons for many of the customers to deploy private cloud. However, when they start deploying private cloud, most of the people nowadays think about OpenStack, right? There are several issues around OpenStack. Number one, of course, OpenStack, as its name says, it is an open source, which means you will be responsible for everything. You have to make sure which version of the OpenStack to select. You have to support everything by yourself. However, do you know that OpenStack version renewal happens every 6 months? So if you just do the OpenStack for 3 years, that means you have to manage 6 versions of OpenStack. You have to test 6 versions of OpenStack. You will be responsible for 6 versions. That's not easy, unless you are the really, 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 really fully resourced team, right? So these are some of the issues that I would love to highlight. And because of that, customer is having a challenge, and also they are spending a lot of time to test and validate all of the combination of the components, not only OpenStack, sometimes they need to rely on some of the external resources as well. So this is a huge issue, and there is an article actually also prove this point. I love this title, Getting Stuck on OpenStack. They're trying to use the OpenStack, but they're stuck because of exactly the same reason. Many of the customers from the OpenStack research survey says they're concerned about their expertise shortage. They're not professional, they're not an expert of OpenStack technology by itself. So some of the discussion we are having with many of the customers nowadays is to provide the fully validated, tested solution involving this OpenStack with F5 so that it will minimize the amount of the testing resource and time and money of the customers to deploy OpenStack. It is true that this package will basically restrict the specific version of OpenStack, and also it is targeting a Red Hat OpenShift solution, so specific version of Red Hat and specific version of F5. That is true. So there will be the less freedom. However, we believe we can address a lot of the pain point of the customer with this bundle package solution, because we do hear from many of the customers that it is not easy to keep up with a newer version of OpenStack every 6 months. We provide all the validated result, all the documentation is ready, just in order to make as much easy as you can to deploy OpenStack. And our ultimate goal, obviously, is to make every single cloud deployment to be quick and easy, because that is the exact business expectation for the cloud. And it's not only for the OpenStack. We also are doing the similar approach to public cloud services as well, to make sure that all the users of F5 can easily, quickly deploy our solution on the public cloud as well. So the ultimate goal is even the baby can deploy F5. Maybe this will be our vision. And one of the examples that I have heard internally is that with this validated solution, customer was able to reduce 76% of their resource and time to deploy OpenStack. It might be more or less for some of the customers, but the key point is there's a big, big benefit in terms of the rapid deployment solutions, right? All right, last but not least, my most favorite topic, IoT. Let me talk about this topic at the last section of my session. So there's IoT topic everywhere nowadays, right? And I just wanted to pick and choose just one quote from Internet of Things world that happened back in May this year in the United States. In this opening keynote, there was interesting commentary from this organizer who just mentioned. The challenge of IoT industry nowadays is that customers are not buying IoT because of the technology. Customers are buying IoT because they have a business goal. IoT is just one of the options for them to achieve the business goal. They don't care about if the technology is IoT or not. They don't care. It's not an issue. For the customer, the business goal is the only point, right? Please keep this in mind, because I will come back to this later. Second point, I would love to show some of the interesting photo from my recent business trip to China. And I just wanted, before starting, I just want to ask one thing to everybody. How many of you are familiar with IoT rental cycle service in China? It's becoming an extremely hot topic nowadays. Okay, that's great, so that I will be the first person to introduce to all of you. So this is a big boom in China because I'm visiting China every year on May for China Agility. That's exactly same event, right? And I didn't actually knew about this service until the day I land to Beijing city this year. But when I land to Beijing this year, I noticed something's different from last year. I see this colorful bicycle exists everywhere, all over the cities. And people are actually using it. According to my colleague from Beijing office, there's tons of providers already launched this service in the major cities. Just for example, in Beijing, there's more than 20 service providers. And top 5 vendor has 5 million bicycles per each in Beijing. That is already double of the entire population in Tokyo City, by the way. That's crazy size, right? And the greatest thing about this rentals bicycle service is that they can ditch when they finish wherever they want. This is big difference from the traditional way, right? Users. One of the reasons, the background story that I heard is that because of the typical user behavior in China, people don't return the bicycle. That is why they come up with this idea. But actually, it's very, very convenient because you don't need to care about where you should return, right? And in this case, this is really funny because I found the bicycle has been thrown away right next to one of the traditional temple in Beijing city. I hope the monk was not the person who ditched the bicycle, but actually it was there. Hopefully it was not. And this is the funniest part of this story on the next slide. I was thinking, okay, this is great service, but by the way, how are they collecting all of these bicycles? This is based on the IoT technology. It's an advanced technology, right? I was so curious. How can they collect the bicycle? And I was walking all the way around in the city after the agility event to find out how they can do it. And finally, I found it. I took a picture by myself. This is the moment they collect the bicycle. Traditional way. Very, very traditional. It was so interesting to see it. And somehow I was feeling a little bit of the relief. But anyway, this is the way they are doing. And by the way, the tips behind of this service is they have a GPS enabled in the bicycle. And from every iPhone application of these services, you can identify which bicycle is located in which area. And you can just do the QR code, and then you can enable the service to be started for yourself. You can ride it, and it's very, very cheap. That is why they call it as an IoT bicycle. Yes, I just told you. That is why they call this is IoT bicycle. To be very frank with you, maybe this is not IoT technology. It can be just a GPS. I haven't confirmed because I cannot read Chinese website, but that can be the case. This is the second point. Keep it in your mind because I'll come back in the last section of this story, right? Okay, so talking about the IoT, there are a lot of trend and the pressure of the business for IoT exists that drive all of these use cases. But most importantly, I would say, sorry, I don't have enough time, so I'll skip most of the things. But the key thing here is IoT and big data is really pressuring. All of these needs are pressuring IoT use cases nowadays. And F5 just started to provide the answer to the challenge of these application networking. If you think about F5's technology, if you're familiar with F5, what F5 can do for you, probably it will be easier for you to understand. This is a typical diagram that is for application layer and things, which is a device layer, and all the connectivity layer in the middle. Basically, F5 can do everything except device and the application by itself. We will make sure all the connectivity, all the security, and all the high availability. Let me use another diagram as well. This, on the left-hand side, you will see traditional website-based architecture. On the right-hand side, you will see IoT-based architecture. Except the application protocol layer, everything is exactly the same. Which means, for F5, IoT and traditional service is not a big difference. It's almost the same, except one thing. This communication protocol, we are introducing the new communication protocol that is optimized, best fit for IoT environment. Small device, small computing resource. There are some newly introduced communication protocol that fits into that requirement. However, actually, I need to skip this slide. One of the use cases that we are introducing is making sure the SSL traffic to be fully terminated and controlled by F5 gear in front of the IoT broker servers. But the key thing here is basically this one. The first example, IoT World Keynote. Second example, IoT Bicycle. And last but not least, this is Facebook Messenger, right? And I'll talk about the communication protocol, which is MQTT, the newly introduced IoT protocol. Guess what? This Facebook Messenger uses MQTT. But it's not IoT, right? It's just a messenger applications. But they are using MQTT because they thought that is the best communication protocol for them. This is a summary. IoT does not mean you have to use the newly introduced protocol. Indeed, according to some of the internal discussion in N5, we have identified some customers in Europe, for instance, wanted to deploy IoT project with using HTTP, the traditional ones. Again, just like the guy in Internet of Things world mentioned, technology is not driving. Business is driving. So the question is, if you are to start the IoT project, IoT opportunities, the first thing you need to care about is, what is the business goal? What is the business requirement? It's not about which protocol you want to use, right? First, you want to set the goal of the business goal, and then going down to the technology and requirement. It can be MQTT, which is the new protocol. It can be HTTP, the traditional protocol. It does not matter. It's all up to your application requirement. It is you to decide who knows your own business. This is how GE Digital is doing. This is how all the automotive companies doing all over the world. It is not the technology who is driving. But technology has to be flexible to support any business requirement. And that is exactly what F5 is trying to do with all of these new trends: cloud, IoT, microservices. With the business requirement, all of our customers start seeing the new requirements, new project, new use cases. You have to worry about the new business goals. You should not worry about the technology because we are with you to support all of these business goals to achieve your business application goal smarter, safer, and faster. Thank you for listening, and enjoy the rest of the day.